Guys, what's up? This is the McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, always Colin McAllister, doing a super solo episode today. That's kind of how they've been. My studio is kind of in mid-construction right now, and it's going to stay that way until I find a job, unless you guys want to donate money for that. But in the meantime, we're just going to be doing these virtual types of episodes. I have a couple people that I might be interested in interviewing here that might, happen at some point, but kind of all depends on what happens. But happy gay month, everybody. I got the hat, got the special hat for the gays. We love our gays. I got nothing against gays. I think pride is a cult, but the gay people themselves, the trans people themselves, I got nothing against them. Live free, my man. Anyways, before we get into it, if you guys are watching live and want to put anything in the chat, feel free to do so. We will try to, we'll maybe get to them at the end or, during, just depending on how it goes. But, today I wanted to talk about a couple different things. Mainly I wanted to cover the big story that happened last Friday. And it's always typical, because anytime anything important happens in government, they strategically make sure to not have it happen on any day of the week other than Friday. And I don't think this is an accident. I think if you look at, what are people doing on Friday? They're, going to the bar and drinking. They're going to go party. They're going to just relax from the long weekend, right? Excuse me. So it's very easy to let a big piece of news slip without the public knowing. I think if these news outlets and the government bodies actually were doing their job, they would do it Monday morning, right? Like first day of the week. Hey, this is what's going to happen with Ian Roberts. This is the trial, etc. So I just don't think it's intentional. All right, I should say it is intentional that they do things on Friday. That being said, Ian Roberts was, after 8 months of waiting, this is something that we, have covered extensively in the podcast, especially when this was happening. But Ian Roberts was sentenced on Friday, for recap, for those who don't know what happened to Ian Roberts is he was the superintendent, I believe the superintendent of the Des Moines Public Schools. He was making almost $300,000 a year, which was which was almost double what anybody else in that area was making in terms of being a superintendent. He was an illegal immigrant. He had been in the country for, I think, about 12 years. He had received notices from ICE and from the government to vacate and to leave the country. He did not do so. Upon a traffic stop, he was stopped by Iowa State Patrol, and he fled. And they found a handgun, a hunting knife, $500 in cash in his vehicle, and he was arrested. And in the following weeks, it was determined that the Des Moines public school system supposedly had no idea that this was the case. At first, they gave him a suspension with pay, and then quickly the following Monday they rescinded it to be without pay. And I've always thought that that was a very clear showing of bias from the Des Moines public school system. I feel like if that happened in any other context, it'd be like, we're not going to pay this guy, right? There's no way we can pay this guy anymore after, there's no way he can have a job after something like this happens. But I think there's a huge, Democratic leftist leaning in the education system in Iowa. And, I think his race and other things and the immigration issue as a whole probably played into that, right? I think it's played into a lot of their responses over the months following. Jackie Norris, I think, is she actually I believe rescinded her bid for it might have been U.S. Senate. I can't remember what the position was, but there was some political position that she was going to seek, and she did rescind it. So, I mean, that's a good example of the public doing its magic in that way, right? But anyways, this all culminated over the course of 8 months to Ian Roberts' sentencing. So let's read this first article. This is from KCCI. Former Des Moines Public Superintendent. Public school superintendent Ian Roberts was sentenced Friday 24 months of federal prison after pleading guilty to falsely claiming U.S. citizenship and illegally possessing firearms. Now, I was actually surprised, because I had thought when he originally was, announcing what, because, when you are charged, you announce, guilty, not guilty. I think he announced that he was going to be not guilty. So this must have changed at some point. His lawyers probably were like, hey, man, this isn't going to work. So he pled he pled guilty and was sentenced to 24 months of federal prison after falsely claiming U.S. citizenship and illegally possessing firearms. And the prosecutors had sought to for him to serve a little more than 3 years. I was doing some Grok research today, and from all the cumulative charges that he got, with the incident, he would have been looking at about 37 months for, combined with being an illegal immigrant and having it be a first-time charge. However, this got dropped down to 2 years based on the fact he wasn't violent and worked in the education system, etc. And I think that is a testament to just like how, these government officials always get off. Like, this is why I'm an anarcho-capitalist at the end of the day, because I don't believe that there's ever a system that we can have, a government system that we can have that does not protect the elite more than its citizens. It's just not possible. Never has been possible. Never can be possible. Because, like in a business sense, like you need bosses, you need people, you need CEOs, you need people to run these businesses, right? Like you need people at the top. If you don't protect the people at the top, then the whole thing crumbles, right? And this is like the mindset of the government. It's like, yeah, we need to have government officials. We need to have government bureaucrats. And we need to like not, be as punitive to them as the citizens. I fully believed if this had happened to an illegal immigrant in the state of Iowa, like a regular normie, someone who wasn't affiliated with government, they probably would have easily seen the full 37 months that was expected. But, Ian Roberts is not getting this. He's getting 2 years, actually less than 2 years. He's actually, including, what do they call it? Time served. So he's actually only going to be seeing about 16 months. And then you factor in if he's on good behavior and all that, he'll probably do less of that. And he is being deported after his sentencing. So I think that's good. Not that I'll reiterate, but I explained this one of the last episodes I did about him, which was, I'm not for deportations. But I think if you are going to if you're going to target anybody for these kinds of things, it should be government officials. A man who is part of that crony system, they want to take care of their own people. I'm all for that. Like, if you're a government official and you do something really fucked up and corrupt, and the government then responds to kick that person out, go for it, man. Like, you signed up to be part of that crony system, and if it does that to you, that's kind of on you, right? And so he is going to get deported after his time served, and I think it's Guyana. I don't know how to pronounce it. Guyana. He's going to go back there, continue his education career, supposedly. And that's what's happening with Ian Roberts. This other article from justice.gov, let's just read this because it kind of goes over a little more some of the charges. According to public court documents and evidence presented at sentencing, Ian Andre Roberts, 54, Guyana, I can't pronounce that, Guyanese citizen falsely stated that he was a U.S. citizen of employment on employment paperwork related to his position at the Des Moines Public Schools in June of 2023. Roberts was not and has never been a United States citizen. Roberts was not authorized to work in the United States except for an 18-month period between July 2018 and February 2020. On September 26, 2025, Roberts knowingly possessed a loaded Glock pistol in his vehicle while knowing that he was unlawfully present in the United States. On the same day, he also possessed 3 additional firearms at his residence, including a loaded pistol, a loaded rifle, and a shotgun. Underneath the floor mat in his personal vehicle, law enforcement also located a copy of the May 2025 order directing his removal from the United States of Guam. That's kind of that's a little ironic, right? Like the notice for his deportation was in his car. Hey, I forgot about it. There's something kind of funny to that. But, you know, this is, like I already said, this is, I think, a classic example of someone who is part of the crony system, who is the head of, like, a head position in the crony system, skating by. Look, I know he's doing time. He'll probably get, I mean, this guy's loaded. He and we're going to go over this clip from Rob Sand where he actually does a very good job laying out, you know, what happened in the responses. Even, you know, I wish he would call the DMPS a little bit more, but that's to be expected. But, you know, he actually did a very good job, I think, addressing this. And, you know, he had, you know, backdoor business dealings, essentially, like school contracts that were going to people that he was not only professionally entangled with, but actually romantically entangled with in a couple senses, or a couple instances. You know, this isn't official reporting, so I don't want to say that, like, I know the scoop or that this is official, but I did see rumors that him and Jackie Norris had a little, you know, fling. So, I mean, who knows, like, what levels of corruption really played into this, right? And, I mean, I think the disappointing thing, this is why I just say, like, I'm sure this is the case with other states, but, like, there's something particularly about Iowa. Maybe it's just because I live here, but there's something particularly about Iowa where the corruption is just so blatant. Like, this thing that, you know, Rob Sand is rallying against, which I totally agree with him on, that's wrong, is, like, the government is doing everything they can to limit the auditing power. Which is, like, essentially you're saying, I mean, that is draconian in a sense, right? Like, you need, yes, it's another government branch, or, like, you know, part of the government for sure. But, you know, you would hope if a government system worked perfectly, if it worked well, that there would be some self-correcting system in that. And when the local government, the state government, I should say, does things in the bills and the laws that actually limits that to happen, that's really draconian. And, you know, we'll see what Rob Sand actually does about that. You know, if he really does some good things about that, like, I think that would be awesome. Is he going to target Democrats the same way as Republicans? We'll see. But anyways, let's actually just dive into this right now. This is Rob Sand discussing the some of the events surrounding so I think this happened within the month after Ian Roberts was arrested. He did file an audit against the Des Moines public school system, which is good. I congratulate him for that at the time. I think that's great that he's doing that. And this came out about a month ago, so I you know, if I'm not sure what the timeline was with that episode that I did where I called him out on that or not, but if this had happened before that episode, I apologize. And that was my bad. That was my misinformation, I suppose. But if not, whatever. I mean, things happen with the way they happen. It's good that he's doing this now. But anyways, let's just watch this clip of Rob Sand addressing the Des Moines Public School audit.
Thank you all for being here. We are releasing today 2 different reports centered on Ian Roberts, his actions at the Des Moines Public Schools, as well as the Department of Education and the Board of Educational Examiners and their work in licensing him. The second of these was related to a request by a state senator under Iowa Code Iowa Chapter 11.5C. That is the simplest one to talk about today because the Department of Education refused to provide us with any records related to the licensing process for Ian Roberts. We had been asked by a state senator to review the licensing and background check policies and procedures, any related fees, and any contracts with third-party vendors to do this work. These background checks and licensing processes are obviously there to protect students, ensure proper credentials, and maintain public trust. Despite legal authorization requiring cooperation with the auditor's office through Iowa Code 11.5, the Department of Education refused to provide the necessary information and documentation. So the auditor's office can't tell you whether or not laws are being followed or whether or not taxpayer resources were spent responsibly here because the administration refused to answer our questions or provide any information.
So this is, on the Department of Education and by extension, Kim Reynolds. I'm sure that her, she oversees these things, right? So, it's been pointed out before by Rob Sand that she has done things legally to limit the power of the Iowa Auditor's office after the gambling I think the gambling scandal, where there are funds being misallocated and all that. And this is very similar to that, almost exactly like this in a way. And, the auditor's office, unfortunately, does not have the, power to prosecute. They don't have the power to do these things, to prosecute the Des Moines public school system, which, I think should be done. And look, I'll say this, if and when Rob Sand becomes governor, I would love to see him do this. I would love to see him sue the shit out of the Des Moines, both the Des Moines public school system and the Department of Education. They should both be sued to oblivion. How much of that will actually happen, I don't know. He's talked a lot about, increasing things in education departments. So I guess time will tell if that will be something that he actually pursues. I really hope he does. But this is just this is egregious. The fact that you have a government branch whose job is to self-correct the government, and then the wider part of the government just tells you to fuck off. Essentially, that's essentially what they did. They were like, "No, fuck you. We're not going to talk about this. We're not going to give you information." Eerily, very similar to the thing that we talked about, I think, about a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago, where Kim Reynolds was being sued by the Des Moines Register, and she was required to give forward documentation, and a judge just ruled no. They were just like, no, fuck you. A very common thing that generally happens, in those types of cases. No, just had a judge sign it off, skirt around it, etc. Which is just, it's just fucked up. It's just fucked up that this is how the Iowa government operates. Really any government. But like I said, I think there's something about Iowa that's just especially egregious. So anyways, let's keep playing this. This is another part. So this is where he kind of gets into some of the specific, corruptions that were unveiled with, like I was saying before, how Ian Roberts has certain backdoor dealings and all that. So let's play this.
Obviously undermines our ability to do our work. It undermines the ability for the legislature to conduct oversight, and it undermines transparency for taxpayers. This is, of course, entirely predictable, and in fact, for the folks who passed SF 478, desirable. When they passed what we have called Iowa's biggest pro-corruption law ever, it was designed to make sure that there was an excuse for withholding information from the auditor's office so that they could also hide it from the public. Now, of course, what you will hear from them and what we've included in our report is their claim that there was, for some reason, an additional engagement letter needed. I want to remind everyone here that the Reynolds administration actually agreed that we didn't need engagement letters. They made that demand. They instructed all state agencies to stop cooperating with us. And through our communications with them, they eventually relented on that demand. And yet here you see it today because they need to make words come out of their mouth to justify what is obviously wrong and obviously a violation of common sense.
So, and this is something I'm genuinely confused about, because from what I understood, I thought that the auditor's office required an additional letter. If this is the same thing, I could be misinformed. But that part definitely kind of confused me a little bit. It's like, is he now shifting the blame to the overall the overall state government, the Department of Justice, etc., or is this how it went? Or did he just misinform us, or is this just something that I'm confused on? I don't know. If somebody knows, let me know. But like, I don't really understand that. And also, I think this just kind of goes to the broader point of what I was saying earlier, is I think the few disappointing things in this news conference is I wish he would just call it the Des Moines public school system more. He seems to solely and granted, I did not watch past, because at the end they do questions. Maybe he answered this at the end, but I wish there was some form of being able to call out the Des Moines public school system, because ultimately at the end of the day, even if the Department of Education and the state of Iowa as a whole gave ability for there to be loopholes, the Des Moines public school system still played a huge part in refusing to take blame. They literally blamed the third party who they did their background checks through for not doing a good background check. Instead of just owning up and just saying, hey, yeah, we fucked up. Like, we could have ourselves done a background check. We could have, I just do not believe that there was something that they couldn't have done to catch this sooner. If they truly didn't know, then there's a true amount of incompetence that needs to be corrected. So again, I hope Rob Sand, when he takes office, corrects this and is willing to let people go and willing to change a lot of this stuff. We'll see. I think if his plans go through where he wants to put money into the education system, it's going to be very difficult to do both things at the same time. It's going to be very hard for him to increase taxes, to put more money into the education system while also getting rid of people in the education system. Like those are just two very difficult things to do at the same time. Maybe he'll do it, but I kind of doubt it. All right, let's keep watching.
The second report. We were asked by the Des Moines Public Schools to dig into transactions related to Ian Roberts. We found thousands of dollars in questionable reimbursements and disbursements, including 38 improper or unsupported procurement card purchases totaling over $2,000. In addition, and more troubling in terms of deception, 2 undisclosed conflicts of interest for Ian Roberts. He had a pre-existing professional relationship with the owner of a company called Lively Paradox, as well as a close and allegedly amorous personal relationship with that individual. He did not disclose these conflicts to the Des Moines School Board and tried to steer contracts worth thousands of dollars, which he did do successfully to this individual. In fact, when one individual, the CFO of the Des Moines Public School District, found out about the professional relationship, Ian Roberts waited until the CFO was out of the country on vacation and then pushed a contract so that the controller who signs these contracts or advances them in the CFO's absence would be the one that would do the work. And so by waiting for that, he was demonstrating the fact that he knew that he shouldn't be doing this and waited for the opportunity to do it instead. It is completely unethical for someone to advocate for either a contract with someone with whom they have a professional conflict or an intense personal conflict. At the time, DMPS didn't have a conflict of interest policy. This defies common sense to do these things. It's unethical to do these things, and yet they didn't have a policy against it. They have since updated that policy, which is at least an improvement at this point.
So I guess he did call out the DMPS a little bit toward the end, so I'll give him credit for that. But oh yeah, and here's something I'll say, because I'm sure, I don't know, I stay off social media these days. I stay off Facebook and Instagram. I stay off Twitter. Solely YouTube, baby. So I don't really know where, local leftists or, people who are sympathetic to the immigration issue are on Ian Roberts. If I were to guess, they probably all looked at him as, oh, look at this poor black man this poor black immigrant who is getting fucked over by the system. Boo hoo hoo. And I think like this, it's again, I give Rob Sand kudos for even like including this. This isn't something he had to do. It probably works against him politically to do that, to admit like, yeah, this man was doing some really shady shit behind the scenes. And, I know people who knew Ian Roberts and always had really good things to say about him. And I think when you pair these two things up, it just goes to show that like this man was like at least a borderline sociopath, right? Like there is, and I think this is just true of government officials in general. That like they do tend to just be very sociopathic. Like they will do things in private behind closed doors that work against the public, and then at face value, when it matters, when you have to impress the normies, you'll do this thing where you walk out dressed like a pimp, fucking going around being like, oh yeah, I'm so great with the kids, right? And then meanwhile you're doing all these really shady backdoor deals to just soak up the money from the same people who you're like, the same taxpayers who you're like in buddy with. Yeah, this is just egregious. Fuck Ian Roberts. Sentenced to 2 years, knock 8 months off out of that. Looking at 16 months. Probably will do less. Probably will do a year or less. We'll get deported. That's good. And this is like the whole, when I argue with like people about like the whole deportation issue, I think like a very easy thing is like, why do you have detention centers? Like, I can understand there needing to be like a middle, or like, detention centers, or I should say, like, if you, in the case of Ian Roberts, like you're gonna make him do jail time in a federal prison. Like, I can understand the concept of a detention center in terms of like, you need a point from where the cops are picking up the immigrants, the illegals, and then they need to bring them, like, the cop can't in the middle of like Iowa take an illegal immigrant and then drive them to the border, right? Like, that's going to take a couple days. Like, they can't just do that. So like, I can understand the idea of like having a system where it's like, okay, we're going to put all these people in detention center, we're going to put them all in one place, and then we're going to ship them all in one group. Like, I can wrap my head around that logically. But that's almost never what happens in these cases. What it really comes down to is people sitting in these detention centers for months, years, sucking up taxpayer dollars, having to feed them, house them, etc. And also just like being really horribly mistreated for the crime of not having a piece of paper. And like, there's just so many things about like logistically, like, if you want to make the pro deportation argument, to me, you at the very least have to acknowledge that like we have a terrible system of doing it. Like, in the same sense, like, if someone comes into my home and I need to get rid of them, like, you need to get rid of that person. Like, if someone comes in right now, I'm like, dude, like, I'm going to use force and I'm going to get you off my property and you're not going to come back. And I think when people have the pro deportation argument, that's how they think of it. They think of it like that. And that's just not how it works. That's just not how it works. I would be glad with Ian Roberts completely skipping his prison sentence and just going to his country where he came from. I would be okay with that. I think anybody who argues otherwise, they have just some like knee-jerk emotional reaction where it's like, well, he needs to be punished. Yeah, like, look, I think he did some really egregious things. I don't think putting him in a jail cell is going to undo any of that. And the utilitarian argument, the best thing that I think you can do is just get him the fuck out. Like, I don't know. If a guy comes into my house and sprays graffiti in my walls, what? I'm going to lock him in my basement until I've decided that, okay, time's up. You've stayed in my basement for as long of a time as I deem necessary, as I deem worthy for you having done this. Or I could just kick him the fuck out and deal with it. Makes a lot more sense to me. Okay. One last thing I want to talk about before we tune out today. Normally I don't care about what the Pope says. I don't really give a shit. The same as the local pastor or the local religious nut. Like, I don't really care. I don't. If you want to make arguments, fine. But like, I'm talking like speeches. Like, I don't really care what the Catholic Church does. The same way I don't really care what the government of some foreign country does. Really, I mean, if they're doing awful things, I guess I care about that. But I'm not going to be like super tuned into that. Like, in my mind, I'm going to write off like the Catholic Church is doing some awful things. Fine. That being said, the Pope of the Catholic Church gave a speech about artificial intelligence. And I think this is something that, you know, tracks with a lot of conservative types, tracks with a lot of, you know, libertarian types. And, you know, they tend to, it's funny, right? Because they will rail all day about socialism, about how all these leftists want to do all these things with tax dollars and inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's always that one issue, right? I mean, that's the case with anyone, but like, you got called out, right? So like, they have that one issue where they're like, oh, it's like AI is really dangerous, so this is the one time we need to use government, blah, 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 right? And I totally reject this. I think if you want to have this ideology where you're going to be against government enforcement, government, all that, you gotta be consistent on that. You don't get to just pick and choose. You don't get to just pick and choose when it's convenient for you. Like, you know, as much as I love Dave Smith, I think he does that a lot, right? I think there are a lot of times where he's like, I don't like authoritarianism unless it suits me, unless it's like my kids or whatever. And like, at some point, you gotta bite the bullet. You gotta bite the bullet and be like, yeah, if I'm gonna be against authoritarianism, then like, I'm gonna be against the whole fucking thing. I'm not going to just justify using it in this one instance where it feels good, right? Whatever, regardless. The Pope was talking a lot about, or not talking a lot, but he did this thing about AI. I thought it would be important to go over it because, I mean, look, I'll point this out right off the bat. Just looking at this face value, and we'll watch this a little bit of this, but like, just looking at this face value, do you see any difference between this and like a court hearing? They have microphones, they have computers. Also, he has a computer in front of him that literally uses artificial intelligence. You can't get away from artificial intelligence. If this man on his phone asks Siri something, he's using artificial intelligence. You know, one of these arguments that I kept seeing, and because, you know, a lot of people were really upset about my take on data centers. And one of the comments I kept seeing was like, oh, well, you know, I used to be able to use YouTube. I used to be able to use a Discord without having data centers. Like, yeah, man, there were cars that, you know, you only needed like 4 gallons and now, you need 32 gallons. Like, I don't know the history of that, but like, that's just such a crap argument. Like, yeah, time happens. Things grow. Things change, things develop. What worked at one point doesn't work any longer. If you have a factory that produces a certain amount and then your customer base increases and you can't keep up with it, then you got to change your fucking thing. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the show The Bear one of the best episodes that is like, they do it with the one shot tracking, all that. One of the best episodes on that is someone puts like their recipe or something online, and the printer for the orders is like running off the hook, and it's this really intense episode where it's like you are like there's an exhilaration with like, oh my god, they're getting all this business, but in reality they are all freaking the fuck out because it's so much, like they can't handle it. I think a very similar thing's happening with these data centers. So yeah, man. And he actually the Pope actually admits this in the videos where it's like, I don't really have a solution, but like, this is just bad. It's like I was saying that last episode, right? Like, if you're going to be against this, fucking have a reason, like have some kind of counter to it. And you don't even need to be that smart and have a counter. At least acknowledge that like, this is going to be a problem. Like, yeah, if you just do what Tucker Carlson wants us to do and just nuke data centers, like that's going to have consequences. At least grapple with that. Anyways, yeah, let's just watch this first. There's a couple of different parts from this that I wanted to go over, but we'll just watch this first part.
Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed. The word is strong, I know, but deliberately chosen because this moment needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating paths forward for humanity. The Church has long been working for nuclear disarmament, aware that every great technical power can affect people's lives, and so must be accompanied by adequate moral discernment and public control. Nuclear disarmament remains a service to peace and the dignity of the human family. In a similar sense, artificial intelligence now demands to be disarmed, freed from logics that turn it into an instrument of domination, exclusion, and death. Like nuclear energy, it must be at the service of all and of the common good. Decisions about technology must never be separated from conscience and responsibility.
Okay, so two big things that he's doing right now. First of all, he is blatantly asking for control of this. Now, I've had Biblical Anarchy and Jacob Winograd from Biblical Anarchy in the podcast. I hope to have him on again at some point. He has talked about, how he believes that, a majority of Christians do, relate or mirror these libertarian non-aggression principles, anarcho-capitalist, whatever, principles and viewpoints. Like they do reflect that. I think it's and maybe we pointed this out, but I think it's very hard to make that correlation when your church leaders are asking for complete government censorship. Maybe it's the next clip that he specifically calls for public, surveillance, or not surveillance, but restrictions or what have you. So that's like the first really okay, and the second thing, he is really going to compare artificial intelligence to nuclear weapons. Now, this is insane. If he wanted to make the correlation to nuclear power, I mean, he still wouldn't have a very good argument, but that would be a little better, right? Nuclear is actually a really useful source of energy that really helps a lot of people. We all think about nukes and fallout, right? But there are actually a lot of really positive things that come from nuclear energy. So, I mean, if he were correlating that, he would have a teeny bit better of an argument. But to compare nuclear weapons, something that has killed, hundreds of thousands of people, to artificial intelligence, which, I mean, in the worst case, might be taking away jobs in the near future, or the near future, and well, it will inevitably, but inevitably, but there will also naturally be jobs at the end of that. like there's that, and then there's also like the the implications of like people stealing people's identities or likeness, like things like that, using AI to hack certain systems, like like that stuff is dangerous, right? That is just the that's the end result of technology, not the end result. That is a negative aspect of technology for sure. I would never like argue against that. To make that be the thing where we're going to both limit this technology and then we're also going to have the government step in and regulate it, is really dangerous. And this is like, I stand by saying that Tucker is a socialist. The Pope is a fucking socialist. That's like if you're going to talk about technology, it is a way scarier reality in my mind to have the government have total monopoly and control on artificial intelligence than a handful of tech billionaires. Like, if I had to pick one of those two realities, that's not even a contest. I'd rather have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. I would rather have all these people have complete artificial intelligence control than the U.S. government. Like, that is not even close. Both are terrible realities. But like, I shouldn't even say terrible realities. Both are really not good things to have happen. But the government angle is way worse. And this seems to just be the counter argument. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, like, these Republican types, these conservative types, they will bash gun control all fucking day. But then when it comes to the fucking AI, they want the same fucking thing that the leftists want. It's infuriating. It's like you are just intentionally being obtuse. Because again, this is why I always say, like, emotion trumps logic every time. Like, people will find an emotional reason to say, hey, we need to use government in this case, even though I'm anti-government and an anarcho-capitalist, libertarian type, whatever. Like, now we need to use government censorship. And it's very telling that like the Pope wants to integrate the government into this issue, right? This is like, I don't really fuck with him anymore, but Jason Bonnell, I remember he and I had conversations about this where, I would always say, like, I just don't believe that the church can ever be separated from the state. I just don't think it can happen. Because you're relying on the body of the government to actually carry that out. And you're also relying on the body of the church to actually carry that out. The only way to really, take care of that issue is to abolish the state. I'd rather have abolishment of the state over the abolishment of churches. That is an institution in itself, but I think there's at least some voluntary aspect to that. Even when, until they are using the state to their advantage. Like, if there was a church of like 20 people and I was like, okay, like, this church sounds cool, I'm going to go there, I'm going to voluntarily give money. Like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a business in a sense. I don't really have a problem with that. But I mean, obviously these churches, it's not like that for a majority of these religions. It's super tied into the state. The state uses the churches use the state, etc. And I don't really see any way of getting around that without abolishing the state. But regardless, let's go into the second clip, because I think this is actually where it becomes, this is like the most appalling.
It's not a naive
admittance. So, yeah, let's play this.
It's not a naive dream. It is a direction. It is the path that Jesus Christ opens within history. For this reason, the Church wishes, with humility and frankness, to be part of conversations on artificial intelligence. We do not possess the technical answers, nor do we seek to displace those with expertise. But we bring a wisdom concerning the human that our present time desperately needs.
Okay, so let's just pause it there already, because he already said a lot there. He's implying that, and I've actually made this argument a lot, so I'm really glad he's saying that he's implying that Jesus is a socialist. that like this is actually what Jesus would want. Jesus would want the state to intervene in what is going on with data centers and artificial intelligence. That's very telling, and I actually think it's accurate. The second thing that I think is really alarming is that he is now actually directly saying that he should that the church should be directly involved with what the state does with artificial intelligence. And this is fucking terrifying. First of all, he's in Rome. He's not even in America. Now, does he directly say the U.S. government? No. But let's be real. Even if he's talking like on the level of the UN, the U.S. runs that ship, right? Like we are the most powerful country in the world. We're the most profitable country in the world. Like, of course, he's talking about the United States of America making regulations. Also, he's from Chicago. So, yeah, of course, he's talking about the U.S. He's not talking about the Italian government coming in. But like, this is just like, this is just something that is just so appalling and so telling of like the true nature of religion. Religion is not this benign libertarian thing where it's like, oh, they're separate and they do their own thing and they don't give like, this is the end result of it is these churches get bigger and bigger and bigger and they use the state. Plain and simple. They use the state to do their bidding. And it's just wrong. It's just fucking wrong. But of course, because he's the Pope, because there's a religious bend to it, most people will look at this and say, yeah, that's right. Tucker Carlson will look at this and say, yeah, that's right. Catholic libertarians, Christian libertarians, they will look at this and say, yeah, that's right. We need to do this. And they won't even think twice. Let's finish this up.
Every person is unique and irreplaceable, a free and intelligent subject with a conscience, capable of seeking God, serving one another, and caring for our common home. It's not a naive dream.
Okay. I don't agree with the God part, but yeah, sure. What? So you acknowledge that everybody's unique and capable and all that, and you're going to take away tools to enable them to do that further? Yeah, that makes a lot of fucking sense. Oh, God. I don't know what it is. I have this special hatred for the Catholic Church. As I think a lot of people do, there's this joke I always heard. It was like, if you grow up Catholic, you become one of two things. You either become an atheist or a priest. It's like you either reject the whole thing entirely or you just become part of the fucking cult. And, that's not actually a one-to-one. I know a lot of Catholics who, end up becoming Reformed or Lutheran or whatever. So it's not one-to-one, but I think it's still pointing into the idea of this institution is just so fucking it's so bad. Talking about corruption in the government, holy fucking shit. An organization that has refused to do anything about the mass pedophilia allegations, and it's kind of, it's interesting how in a way the government and the church actually act really a lot the same. They do the same thing with people who are abusers. They just move them to a different, if it's the church, they move them to a different parish. If it's the school system, they just move them to another school. And this is just what happens. This is what happens when you have power. And the church and the state are the two by far easiest ways to wield that. Okay, we'll wrap up there. It's been a good episode, I think. I'll probably try to do it earlier next time. I try to not do this all the time. I got stuff at home. I try not to just I still want to be a good house husband, right? You're going to say, oh, that's gay, and I don't really give a fuck. It's Pride Month. Get over it. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.